Okay. Well, welcome to the exhibition Alchemy of Women. So thank you so much for being part of this. And I had such a good time meeting you. And I love how the Women's Connection is actually working and we keep
Yeah.
in touch. Can you tell us who you are? What do you do? What's your story?
Oh, sure. My name's Megan Kort, and I work for a publication called Christian Courier. And so I'm a writer and an editor. It's a very small organization, so I do just a bit of everything, and work with some really wonderful people. Um, do you want to hear about my personal story too?
Yes, if you want to share, yes, I think that would be so wonderful to get to know you fully.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a small town. And well, I was born in South Africa, and so I had some global roots to begin with, but have spent most of my life in Canada. And I've lived in Prince George and Victoria. So BC is a big part of my story. And I've always been really interested in calling, divine calling. So I've like spent my undergrad, I focused a lot on female mystics in the medieval period, and for my master's, I studied women in the 17th century and how they like proved their calling before going into convents. And I think that came out of my own curiosity about my calling. Like in high school, I felt like I was being called to be a minister in the Christian denomination that I'm a part of. And I didn't go down that route, but I kept seeing these threads later coming up when I decided to go into studying history, where I was still really interested in calling and the way God speaks directly to women. And the way women have to prove that, because in many denominations and religions, even women who say they're called into leadership might have to go through extra hoops to prove that that's even possible. Um, some like the denomination I grew up in did allow women to serve as ministers, but only since 1995. So it was still very much up for debate. Um, so now in my work, it's very female dominated. Lots of women work as journalists and writers and editors. But I'm often in the place where I get to interview people who are more on the forefront of like pushing the boundaries of being in leadership, where maybe their leadership is kind of contested.
Divine calling. I am just like you captured me there and I'm like, I want to ask her more. Because it's so important and I feel I'll be honest, I'm working on a paper for alienation and how some of the work that, like working on social media and technology, how it alienates us from ultimately our divine calling,
Mhm.
like being almost deaf to it. What can you give me like an insight from your studies, from why was it so important to you? How did you realize it? How did you know it's divine calling?
Well, I think to some degree, like I come from a Christian tradition that talks a lot about calling, like the idea of um, like God having a direct voice that speaks into your life, not in like a mystical sense so much that I got interested in because it was so different than my tradition, but the idea that like God cares about every aspect of life. So if you're a doctor, if you're a librarian, or if you're a teacher, like that's a calling. It's seen as something that's like a God-given gift rather than like that's your secular life and then you do Christian things on Sunday. So I think I grew up with this sense of like all of life is a calling. If you're an artist or a musician, that too is a calling. Um, and so maybe I was sometimes like transposing like that worldview that I was given as I looked at historical sources and seeing people who make certain decisions or moved into like for me, I was studying nuns. And then whenever I saw mention of vocation, like I was working with French sources, um, I was like, oh, that is a continuity to something that I experience in my faith tradition. The idea of God giving a calling has been around for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm. I'm asking because not everybody that I understand what you mean, but
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of people may due to many things, as you know, politics and just the world we live in, it's not widespread topic.
Yeah, that's true. I think like if I was going to explain it to someone who didn't have the same worldview as me, I would say it's about like seeing purpose in what you do on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So it's not just like your hobbies or your job isn't just a way of passing the time or having fun or even making money. It has to do with like something you were made for and like fulfilling that like deep need. And I know a lot of people don't always believe that meaning is inherent. Um, but to me, I think that it explains how we find the energy and motivation to do
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
That there was something we are created for, and then like yeah, trying to fulfill that.
Yeah, you put it so beautifully in words. I absolutely subscribe to that too because I find that quite often we get on the gerbil wheel, especially in the big urban centers, and then a lot of people get sick or they experience some type of a spiritual crisis or a physical crisis that happens. And that is part of the calling too. It's almost like
Hmm.
it wants to bring you back on realizing what you're here for, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find sometimes I hear the language of like, oh, I was made for this, just slipped into secular discussions here and there, and people don't necessarily intentionally say it, but I think sometimes there is something that's like deep in our souls that's saying like, oh, this felt like it was made for me, or this is something that, I was always meant to do, or so like maybe some people would use destiny, or I don't know. I think other traditions pick up on the same thread.
I think it lives in all of us. Anyways, I think
Yeah.
I went off topic because it's such a fascinating topic. So I've asked everybody what their definition of success is. And I would like to hear what that means to you.
Mm, that's really tricky. I think success is a type of like wholehearted living. So I think it involves like having a lot of like physical and immediate needs met. Um, but then I also think it means like fitting into your community in a way that's meaningful. So like having success for yourself isn't the full picture. Like if I had a wonderful home and all the food I could ask for, I don't think I would feel successful. I think I would need people to enjoy it with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Not a single woman I've interviewed, although they acknowledge the physicality and the money aspect as a necessity, not one identified with relationship to capital.
Yeah. Do people mention it as like a component? Like I feel like it's hard to
They
escape.
do. They do, but it's like you. It's like because that's how the world is structured and we need it to function. But it's not a
Hmm.
goal. It's not an ultimate goal as a being. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm like
Oh.
so overjoyed.
Yeah, it must be fun to ask that question to people. It's been pointed out to me before that I use the word success a lot. Um, And so I must have a meaning for it, but I don't know if I've actually thought too critically.
You've recently, can we talk about that? That you're now you had some changes, and
Sure.
and how does that affect? Because that's your professional side, which is to some extent it's success for you growing in a very niche uh, segment of our society and culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I often think of myself as not successful, which is funny because like when I've done personality typing things, I'm someone who is driven by success or at least appearing successful. So then I once was telling this to a friend and they're like, well, then why aren't you more successful? She's a very good friend, so she's allowed to say that. Um, so yeah, I think that like what I work for a publication and will become the editor in the new year with a coworker. And like by some measures in this very small network of readers, we have 1,500 print subscribers and a few and 11,000 online every month. So that network of people, it's like, yeah, they recognize my name when I was in Ontario and went to a church community where there are a lot of readers. There were a few people who I shook their hand after church and they're like, oh, you're Megan Kort. Oh, honey, look, Megan Quartz here from Christian Courier. And so there's like this little tiny little sliver of like recognition, and it feels nice to know that like people who live on the other side of the country appreciate something I've done. But then I come back up to my small town. My friends don't read the publication I work for. They couldn't care less. So it doesn't feel uh like big fame. It just is like sort of like, oh, within this niche, I'm doing something that's appreciated. And I think that does feel like a certain little piece of like satisfaction and like check that box of success to some degree. But I think it's been like a journey to like redefine success away from like, oh, I need to get my PhD to feel successful, or I need, at one point I thought I had to have 4 kids to be successful because like women who I like the town I grew up in, almost every Dutch woman has 4 kids. Um, So to let go of some of those other external markers and then accept that like, oh, the place where I'm called to be right now, I feel like actually I am finding success there. And I'm not working for CBC. Like at one point my one of my life goals was like I'd love to have a requested interview with CBC as like a marker of success or like work in government or some I don't know. So just allowing that definition to shift.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
and it's totally normal. I feel for all of us as we start growing out of our ultimate personalities that we adopt along the way. I feel the more
Yeah.
closer to that divine calling or our true nature and self is you start seeing uh,
Yeah,
different. It's just the world looks differently.
totally.
Yeah. Megan, thank you so much for this beautiful interaction and for sharing your story. And I can't wait to get my editions in the mail. I'm checking
You
now.
are welcome. Thanks for doing this. What a cool idea to get these little snapshots.
Yeah, I'll keep you
Uh,
posted and I'd love to keep in touch.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mira.
Bye bye.
Bye.